All right, back here on CBS Sports HQ, we have Thursday Night Football on deck with the Dolphins and the Bills. And, man, Josh Allen has just owned the Dolphins in his career, 13-2 against Miami. And this is all including the postseason as well. But we know for the Bills, it's really not about beating the Dolphins or necessarily winning the division. It is all about Super Bowls there in Buffalo. So we're going to welcome in our experts, Ran Carthon and Ryan Wilson. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here with us. We want to propose this difficult question that we discussed at the top of the show. What do you think is more likely, that the Dolphins at this state, 0-2 with the situation that's going on there, they go into Buffalo and they get a win, or do the Bills win the Super Bowl this season? Ran, what do you think? What's more likely?
Oh, you would come to me first. This was supposed to. I'm going to err on the side of the Dolphins winning tonight versus Buffalo winning the Super Bowl, because the AFC is still tough, right? We know Kansas City is 0-2, but they can get rolling at any time, and I still think Baltimore is a really good team. So I'm going to say the Dolphins have a better chance of winning tonight than Buffalo does having to win the Super Bowl.
That's the crazy thing is, guys, that's a bold statement, just given how poorly the Dolphins have played over the first 2 weeks and how good Josh Allen has looked over the first 2 weeks, going back to even last season. Of course, he is the MVP. The pass rush for Miami has been non-existent. The offensive line for Buffalo has been out of this world. And if you give Josh Allen time, that's a huge problem. Now, when you can't slow up Daniel Jones, and then the follow-up is, hey, you have to play Josh Allen, that's a big concern if you're Miami. So, look, the odds are long, and the Buffalo Bills have a terrible track record in the Super Bowl, but I have to go with Buffalo just based on what we've seen just solely on the 2 weeks of football both these teams have played. Yeah,
we saw it there. The odds, more of a long shot for the Dolphins to win tonight in Buffalo than the Bills to win the Super Bowl. Dolphins 11.5-point dogs at last check for this matchup. Guys, I think we all know not to Google ourselves, and I hope that Mike McDaniel is not doing that, because if you do, all of the headlines say, is he coaching for his job tonight, and all sorts of things like that. So, Ryan, what needs to happen, I don't know, maybe tonight, maybe in the coming weeks, in order for Mike McDaniel to keep his job?
You know, things are truly and horribly going wrong when Florida Gators fans are looking at the Miami Dolphins and going, you know what? That's a pretty bad situation down there in South Florida.
Why are you
there it is. You're welcome.
Ryan?
In terms of what and just so you know, Jacqueline and Rand are Florida Gator alums. I won't tell you where I went to college because it doesn't matter. There you go, Jacqueline. In terms of Mike McDaniel, I give him credit because he came out and said when they asked Sunday, are you worried about your job? He says, my job is to get this team prepared for the next game, which happens to be Thursday night against the Bills. And he is not focused on any of the outside noise. And part of that's survival, right? You can't spend time worried about what other people are saying, to your point, Jacqueline, about Googling yourself. But this defense has been truly and utterly atrocious. They're not able to generate a pass rush. They're giving up 33 points a game, which is second worst in the NFL. Their passer rating allowed is 126, which ranks 31st. And then the offense has also been a huge point of contention. The running game, they don't even run the ball anymore. You see the 17.5 points they're scoring on offense. They're taking sacks at a prodigious rate, even though teams aren't even blitzing them. One of the lowest blitz rates they're facing on that offense. Now, look, they have been banged up. Yes, Austin Jackson is out the right tackle. I understand all that. But teams are already battling injuries around the league. So they have to find ways to win. And I'll just say this. I don't think they're going to win tonight, but they have to win 3 of their next 4. It's against the Jets, Panthers, Chargers, and Browns. You have to be 3-4 after that Week 7 game, or we're going to have some conversations about what that looks like going forward.
I think the way we led off this show kind of lets you know that the Dolphins weren't expected to win tonight. So I don't think this game matters or factors in. But the best way for Mike McDaniel to keep his job, quote unquote, is to win. I mean, winning is the cure-all to horrible feelings that you may be feeling throughout a season, and winning is the greatest elixir that we have in our league. So all he has to do is find a way, like Ryan said, there's a stretch of games coming that are very, very winnable for this organization, and just have to win football games. You win football games, you go on a nice slide, then everyone will forget, because that emotion of hope will come in. I remember being in San Francisco in 2017, and we lost the first 9 games of the season, and then we went on a late season stretch where we won 5 in a row, and you would have thought that the previous 9 games that you lost didn't exist. So to Mike McDaniels and the Dolphins organization, the best thing they could do is win.
And we've had this conversation a lot of times about Tyreek Hill, right? Because at training camp, it really seemed like, he had turned a new leaf. He's talking about how he's trying to be a better man, working on his relationship with Tua and his teammates. And then, of course, in the Colts game, we're seeing frustration from Tyreek on the sideline, and it's kind of built up from there. Ran, we've talked about this before, but do you think that Tyreek Hill is going to end the season in Miami?
Yeah, I do. I think he will end the season, and I'm glad you said it that way. I think he will end the season in Miami. I don't know that he will be back in Miami after this season because there is a potential out in his contract after 2026. But it carries a dead cap number of $15 million. And going into the season, he has $11 million of his $29.9 million base salary next year that becomes fully guaranteed after the 3rd day of the new league year, as well as a $5 million roster bonus. So I don't think anybody is going to pick up this contract as it currently stands and give the Dolphins the draft compensation that they may be looking for to take Tyreek off their hands as late as October. So I think he finishes the season as a Dolphin, but I don't think he will start the new league year as a Dolphin.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Rand. I think that makes sense, in part because, as you know, there aren't a lot of teams reportedly beating down the Dolphins' door for Tyreek, and we understand that he's not the team captain, and he said some things at the end of last season where he wasn't happy, and it's okay not to be happy if things aren't going the way you want them to go. But the other thing is they need Tyreek. They have Jalen Waddle, who you pointed to as being banged up coming into this game, Jacqueline. Devon Achane has more targets right now than Tyreek does. Malik Washington and Westbrook Akine are the other wide receivers that are getting a lot of reps. And you're not going to win without Tyreek and Jalen out there healthy. Darren Waller hasn't played yet. He's trying to create a sense of having a tight end that can help you out in the middle of the field. So they need Tyreek as much as, or perhaps more than Tyreek needs them, but I don't think he's going anywhere for the reasons Rand laid out. And this offense has not looked anything like the version we've seen in recent years because, by the way, when Tua is on point, he is the best quarterback to run this offense. They just have not been able to get it going, in part because of health and inconsistency. So, like Rand said, if you can find a way, and I don't think it's going to happen this week, but going forward over the next month, to get it all together, they'll be the team we're used to seeing, at least before the weather turns cold.
Yeah, I mean, that's a stat we love to throw out there, how the Miami Dolphins perform in weather, under 70 degrees. When it comes to backup quarterbacks, we're going into week 3 here, and we're already seeing for sure 3 backup quarterbacks that will be starting. So that's Tyrod Taylor for the Jets, and then, of course, Jake Browning versus Carson Wentz in Bengals-Vikings. Maybe Mac Jones, we don't know. Kyle Shanahan saying that Brock Purdy has a chance to play on Sunday. But, Ryan, I'll come to you here. At least from these 3 guys, kind of rank them for us in order from, best to worst, 1 through 3, when it comes to the backup quarterbacks that are going to be in action this week.
Yeah, I think you have to start with Jake Browning, and maybe that sounds crazy when you look at these 3 names, but Jake Browning's 4-3 as a starter for the Bengals. He had to start those 7 games 2 years ago, the last time Joe Burrow missed extensive time, and he held his own, and that's all you want from your backup quarterback. He's not going to come in and go undefeated, and he's not going to do Joe Burrow things, but if he can avoid mistakes, if he can avoid navigating you straight into losses and give you chances to win, that's all you can ask for. After that is probably Carson Wentz, and I don't know if Carson Wentz is a better football player than Tyrod Taylor, but he feels like he's in a better situation. And I don't think it's going to be a reinvention of Sam Darnold in Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy struggled a little bit as a rookie. He's a first-year player, technically, essentially a rookie. But Carson Wentz has played a ton of football, and it's wild to think that he's played with these 6 teams over the last 6 years. And then Tyrod Taylor is in a tough situation in New York, where the Jets' offensive line has struggled. The playmakers around him at the wide receiver position have struggled outside of Garrett Wilson. And I just think he is in a tough spot, given how poorly that team played last week and that loss when they didn't even show up in the home game against the Buffalo Bills.
Well, Ryan, my friend, I will agree with you on number 1 and say that Jake Browning has the lead, in my opinion. Now, if Jacqueline would have allowed us to have Mac Jones, I would have had Mac Jones number 1. But she took Mac Jones off the table, so we're going to roll with
if you want him, you can take
first.
him, Rand. If you want to do like a hypothetical situation where Mac Jones is going to start, I'll let you do it.
Okay, well, you gave it to me, so I'm going to take it. Mac Jones would be my one. Jake Browning would be my two for the same reasons that Ryan laid out. And then we'll differ here because I would take Tyrod Taylor over Carson Wentz. And I'm just looking at it primarily, and I know both of these guys could potentially be, starting more games than just this 1 week. But I'm looking at this as a 1 week, a one-game shot. Who would I rather have out there on the field? And I would take Tyrod Taylor over Carson Wentz just because I've seen it in terms of Tyrod Taylor being able to galvanize the crew and the group around him, both offensively and defensively. And I think whether the Jets play well with him, that remains to be seen. But I think his teammates around him will step up more than what the Vikings players will step up around Carson Wentz.
And Ryan, just because you threw some jabs at the Gators, we're going to talk about your Steelers now, okay? Because usually when we're talking about the Steelers and some problems, we're not talking about the defense, right? Like, prior to this season and historically speaking, that Steelers defense is pretty solid. Not really the case in what we've seen through 2 games when it comes to total defense. I believe they're 29th right now in the league. So, Ran, how do the Steelers turn this around on defense?
Well, I'm glad you came to me first since Ryan threw out jabs, and I knew where this was going to go, and Ryan is our resident Steelers fan. So here's what I'll say. It definitely can't get any worse. How about that? They rank in the bottom third in every statistical category with the exception of short yardage efficiency, where they're 14th. And so at this point, it can't get any worse, Ryan. So we've seen this defense do some unprecedented things, but it all starts up front. It always has, it always will. They've made considerable contributions in their secondary to improve the secondary, but the guys up front, the guys that they've paid a ton of money to, the TJ Watts, the Alex Highsmiths, the Cam Haywards, those guys got to be able to stop the run game and get after people in the passing game to allow this secondary, which they've chose to upgrade, to go out there and make these plays, which they haven't had. And so, and you also need to find a way to infuse this aging defense with some young, talent, if you will, to get this group going up front. So there you go, Ryan. You took a shot at my Gators. I'm taking a shot at your Pittsburgh Steelers and their bottom third defense.
Hey, as the kids said probably 10 years ago, no lies detected. You guys are preaching facts, and I can't even push back on it. That Jets game looked like they were playing Curtis Martin the way Breece Hall ran all over them last week. I thought Sean Alexander came off the couch to run all over him the way that we saw Ken Walker do it. There are no answers. And look, you can say they drafted Derek Harmon in the first round to shore up the middle of that defense. If you're relying on a rookie drafted in the bottom half of the first round to solve your run defense issues, you got a whole bunch of other things you need to sort out. And Jacqueline, you mentioned how poorly they played to start this year. Here's a fun fact for you if you're a Steelers fan. The Steelers are allowing over 100 rushing yards in 7 of their last 11 games. Not great. So, yeah, Cam Hayward has to play. Everybody has to play better. But you cannot win football games consistently and even come close to winning football games consistently if the run defense plays like it did the last 2 weeks. And guess what the Patriots like to do? And obviously Rand knows Mike Vrabel quite well. They're going to run it down their throat and say, let's see you stop us. And if they don't, it's going to be a repeat of what we saw last Sunday at home against the Seahawks.
Ryan, I think you know this. My dad and his family, they're all from West Mifflin. So even though I'm throwing jabs at you, I still got love for the Steelers. I do. And I'm hoping they figure it out. Ryan, we certainly appreciate it. Diving into the biggest headlines in the NFL. As we get into week 3, we have a loaded slate for you on CBS. The Bengals and the Vikings. Yeah, it's the backup quarterbacks, but we still get to see Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase there at 1 Eastern, and then at 4:05 kicks off with the Broncos and the Chargers. All going down on Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+. And it is Throwback Week, celebrating 50 years of the NFL today. Make sure you tune in Sunday at 12 Eastern to travel back to 1975 with the crew.